3 years ago to the month, end of November 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, generative pre-trained transformer. Most people didn't know what the hell this was, but they soon found out that it was set to change the world. More downloads of that application and more application of that application than any digital property in history to that point. It has since been superseded by the next major offering from OpenAI, Sora 2, an application that dynamically generates AI video starring us. Our social media feeds are already peppered and soon to be tsunamied with videos depicting us and our friends and our family and soon to be everybody in situations that basically encompass anything imaginable. Welcome to the multiverse of human digital creativity, playfulness, but also bullying and deep faking and fake news like never before. Hello and welcome to the No Hair All Heart podcast. I am your No Hair host, Mookie Spitz. And the affair of the heart today is this reality facing us now in an unprecedented and amazing capacity. The ability for all of us to project our wildest imagination into a concrete, external, digital form that we can now instantly share with our social networks and beyond. Welcome to a new era in digital communication and engagement. And welcome to the next quantum leap in artificial intelligence. What does that mean? How will it impact us? And where do we go from here? I've been tracking digital tools and tech since digital tools and tech were cool and likely before. I had an Apple IIe computer in college, and I used to program interactive fiction games in the language Pascal. This sounds like ancient history, and very much it is, because the Zoomers and the Gen Alpha folks pretty much responsible for this technology weren't even really born yet, or were about to be born. I'm giving away my tender age as the cusp Gen X boomer. I cracked 61 years old, but that gives me a sense of perspective. I grew up and on into all this stuff, and I've been actively engaged with it throughout. So that gives me some perspective. I'm an early adopter. I was the first to leap on invites to Sora 2, and I've already been playing around. I've created videos with me and some friends, colleagues, and I've been playing around with it, and I've already been awash with the Sora 2 efforts of comedians, social influencers, political hacks, and the like. And just as I made the not too amazing prediction that ChatGPT would change the world back in the end of November of 2022, I'm now stepping up and making the not so amazing claim that Sora 2 will be as much of a leap. You've got some competitors now. When ChatGPT first you really had nobody. Now you have Anthropic's Claude. You have Grok from the XAI Elon Musk people. You've got Google Gemini. And you've got an already crowded space within the AI landscape. But what makes OpenAI distinctive is its first-in-class, best-in-class position. You have Sam Altman, who is arguably not only terrific in terms of anticipating technology trends and liaising with experts to make it happen, but he's a terrific fundraiser. He's able to get people excited in rooms, and these people happen to be billionaires. or representing billions and billions in investment capital, and they have an edge. And this idea of launching this new application within an app, mobile, within a social app akin to TikTok, Instagram, boom, 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 on point. This is it, folks. There'll be copycats, and TikTok and the rest of the entrenched social media apps will do copycats of Sora on their own platforms, no doubt. But it takes an incredible amount of know-how and computational power to pull this off. When you create a quick clip in Sora now, it churns and burns. That little wheel is spinning for a minute, sometimes a couple minutes, to process your 10-second video. Now, people are already aghast at its awkwardness. You're able to put in a prompt anything you want. So, for example, Mookie Spitz riding a tricycle on the moon reciting Shakespeare. Now, my expression will probably be over the top. It might even impose some kind of accent. And the cuts will be a little bit awkward. It's kind of like an amateur director and cinematographer and even writer have all cobbled together a very amateurish 10-second clip. But here's the thing. The video quality itself is cinematic, and the lips and sounds are in sync. And there are moments of pure genius, even within a quickly constructed 10-second dynamic AI video starring me. And most significantly, it's just getting started. It reminds me of the Louis C.K. joke where he observes a passenger on a plane right when they first introduced phone calls that could be made from an in-flight aircraft. And the guy is talking on his phone, and the signal cuts, and then he goes into a fit. God damn it, this piece of shit, this useless piece of shit. And he slams the thing against his armrest. And then Louis C.K. is observing, come on, man, your stupid signal just went out into space. What do you expect? So I'm seeing the same thing. I'm sharing some of these initial personal beta launches, if you will, of using Sora. And my friends and family are like, oh, come on, that doesn't even sound like you. But I'm like responding in the same way as Louis C.K. did to that guy, which is, come on, look at what's happening here. It is the most amazing technology demonstration in memory. And even more significantly, look what this is going to do. Now, on the positive side, it will boost this already outrageous obsession we have with digital technology. People can't put their phones down. Now imagine the ability to generate these videos, soon to be in seconds, and then send them to all your friends. And it'll get to be the point, too, where if a friend or a colleague asks you, hey, do you want to do lunch on Tuesday? Then you can send them a reply, which isn't just a boring okay or sure or a calendar invite. You could literally share a dynamic AI video of the two of you at the restaurant eating and giving each other a thumbs up. And that's a petty banal expression, but that's only the tip of the iceberg of what's feasible here. And as I mentioned, it blows the doors off everything imaginable. I'm seeing videos of huge bears climbing a fence, intimidating a grandma or a toddler, and then said grandma or toddler is staring down the bear and the bear is running away. I'm seeing a chicken strapped to a drone flying in the air and rapping a song about not wanting to be fried and being free. I'm seeing an endless series already of incredibly creative efforts to blow the doors off of what's possible with regard to what's being rendered. And doing so, again, in seconds of creative input time. You just put in that prompt like you would put it in ChatGPT. It's a written prompt. You can use the @ sign to put yourself in there or anyone you follow. And there are guardrails. So I can't put in someone I'm not following, for example. You need to set up what they call a cameo. And what a cameo is you upload not only a photo, but a short video of you staring at the camera, making certain faces. They say smile, grimace, look happy, look sad. And then they instruct you, look up, look to the left. And based on that very short video clip, they render your image in these dynamic videos. Boom. Then your friends, colleagues, anyone you know who are doing the same thing have their own profile on Sora. Now, the only way to integrate somebody real in the real world, IRL, into your video, you need to follow them and they need to ideally follow you. And they need to authorize permissions for people who follow you to use their cameo in their evolving video with their friends and followers. So in a nutshell, they're putting guardrails on bullying, potential harassment, and putting other people in these photorealistic, in these cinemagraphically realistic situations in compromising positions, making them do what they otherwise wouldn't do. And you are basically authorizing others within your network to use your cameo within their dynamically generated AI videos. Now, this is a stopgap. It's already being abused, and there's an entire industry now doing what's called jailbreaking. You can jailbreak into a video by using clever prompts to circumvent the system. Now, prompts include misspelling words to trick the AI. It involves talking around a brand that might have a copyright restriction on the application. So I just created a video with a friend and we are in Disneyland together. And I called out Disneyland and I said, we're wearing Mickey hats. Apparently, Disney's okay with this because we are in Disneyland wearing Mickey Mouse hats and she's eating a churro and we're doing rides and behind us is the famed castle with fireworks. Signature, copywritten, proprietary, Disney images and now video in my video with my friend and booyah, there you go. So I didn't jailbreak this, I just wrote Disney. It was like, Disney, let's go for it. And it went for it. I don't think I'll have as much luck with some other brands. I've tried it with certain other brands. I've tried it with certain people. And if it's a historic figure, kind of a public domain person, that's less problematic than if I put in someone who is alive currently. But I am seeing a bunch of videos through this app of people who would otherwise not be allowed to appear in them. Everyone from Trump to Democrats to politicians, celebrities, they're popping up. People are jailbreaking. So what does that mean? That means that you cannot put limitations on human creativity. And my point is, why should you? There is an argument from a copyright point of view. You spend time, energy, and effort. It's your soul. Your heart and soul goes into content. And then these huge AI companies with trillions of dollars of investment capital swoop in, rip your content, and then make it repurposable as tokens for whomever wants to use it. Now, the good news is unprecedented dissemination of intellectual property. Millions of people might be seeing property or ideas that few people would. And that could have a halo effect on monetization and success for the content creator or originator. But the flip side is it commoditizes content to the point no one's going to pay for yours. They could just whip one up on ChatGPT, on Sora 2, or any of the other AI company platforms and applications. So we're living in an interesting time where on the one hand, content creators have never had this kind of reach. And on the other, their content is being chopped up into tokens and then endlessly reformulated. And the companies responsible for this aren't really paying the content creators. There was a lawsuit and Anthropic agreed to pay each content creator $3,000 for ripping their stuff. And then getting around that kind of fair use provision. But it didn't change the fair use provision. And I'm not sure how this is ultimately going to impact the situation of people with copywritten IP who are still getting ripped and will forever getting ripped. And like I said, I just created a Disney video. I didn't pay Disney, but people seeing it might see it and they might want to go to Disney. Conversely, I can make a video that's deeply insulting to Disney. Beat me, bore me, don't ignore me. That in turn might not preclude people from going to Disney. That might actually inspire people to go to Disney even if the video is derogatory of Disney. There's this whiplash effect and there's this internal paradox where you just need energy and you need sharing and you need attention regardless of its vector, good, bad, or ugly. And that's going to benefit your brand, your content creator goal, and off to the races. Everyone's off to the races. But that begs the bigger question of the truth melding with imagined reality in an utterly unprecedented way. Think about this for a second. In my new science fiction novel, I talk about the implications of living in a multiverse where everything possible, including anything imaginable, is somewhere real and expressed. And throughout my novel, I do various expressions of this concept. I have an alien scientist who builds a simulator that can literally simulate every possible reality. And through that comes the realization that everything possible, everything real is finite. At the end of the day, if you combine and recombine things down to their essential level, you're going to run out of stuff. It's a huge, huge set of realities and possibilities, but you're eventually going to run out. So even if the universe is infinitely big, and even if there's an infinite number of universes, you're just going to run out of stuff and it's going to repeat. And then I've got a conference where a scientist builds a machine where an intelligence can evolve from nothing, and all hell breaks loose there. And then I end the book with this performance, this presentation in 3D with virtual and augmented reality of everyone's social media feeds coming together in a way that highlights the essential storytelling nature of our communication and points to the possibilities of endless expression and what that might mean for the individual. So I do all this in my book, and all of these are kind of mirror reflections of what's becoming obvious when you're on Sora 2 for 5 minutes. First, everything possible is suddenly real. You can put in a prompt for anything you can imagine, and it'll pull it up and it'll visualize it for you. It'll not only visualize it for you, but it becomes a movie, a reel, which is intimate to our experience, our lived experience in the real world. And there you have it. It's like every possible dream becomes reality. That's number one. Number two, as I point out in the book too, it blurs the boundary between what's real and what's imagined, between actual news and information and fake news and information, between an elaborate investigative journalistic effort to uncover the truth behind something hidden and rampant conspiracy theories that are completely untethered from objective reality and even common sense. And it blends all of these together into the ubiquitous backdrop of videos where everything is suddenly being shared. And what exacerbates this challenge and this opportunity is that these videos are anchored in real things, real people, real circumstances, and then extrapolates from those real people and real circumstances. What's wild to me is that the boundary between these two things is becoming increasingly blurred. And if you do a little bit of the math, where is the end point of that? Where is this headed? And it's headed into that truism that in a universe where everything is possible, nothing is real. And then we start to doubt the evidence of our own senses because it's being manipulated in real time in an endless number of ways. It's already problematic being a human because there's so many different points of view about so many different things. If you're a Palestinian in Gaza, you have a very, very different lived experience than an Israeli in Tel Aviv, or for that matter, an American in Seattle, Washington. Our lived experience, our background slices reality in a selective way where we see certain things and can't help but ignore others. And if you look at the philosophy of consciousness and the evolution of humanity, that selective nature is the essence of how we got to be where we are. You can't just take in the whole world, you need a point of view. And we are selected and selective for survival. We've picked and choose mostly through unconscious means, everything from how we perceive reality itself through our senses, the emergent construct that is both the stimuli coming in and how we process it, and the world as we experience it internally, and our conscious, willful acts to get the most out of our experience with this dynamic, emergent thing that we call the universe and us. It's wild. It's interdependent. It's emergent in the sense that when you add up all its components, that's not a description of what's actually going on. And again, I don't mean to make too much of this Sora 2 launch, but I really think this opens up the door to all of these considerations. That it's going to force us to call into question the very essence not only of digital content online, but our own lives and what it means to be human. What part of our lives do we invent? What parts are a natural consequence and process of our instincts, the machinery, the biotechnology of perception, cognition, and the external world that through that emergent reality we manipulate and change ostensibly for our self-interest. This is a very complicated and interwoven kind of story. And when you have an application on your little smartphone there, where within seconds you can generate a reel of anything that pops into your mind, then that highlights all of these things and more. And the more part of this is where it could or should be heading. And beheading is a great way of looking at it, because I think with these advances, we all get a whole lot smarter and a whole lot more stupid at the same time. The heightened intelligence is our heightened ability and excitement about being creative. All of a sudden, people who would never do this kind of stuff find themselves creative directors. Things that the most elaborate studio could not do 10 years ago with a limitless budget is at the fingertips of anybody and everybody. I remember back in the day when Twitter came out and folks of admittedly lower socioeconomic status were super users of Twitter. And I knew a bunch of these people. They did not have a computer and never did. They went direct from nothing to a smartphone. And they were all over Twitter. They talked to their friends, they talked to their family, they picked up all the jargon. And was their grammar and spelling tip-top? No, they invented their own language on Twitter. And they were tweeting up a storm. And that enthusiasm translated pretty soon into TikTok and doing video and reels. So this egalitarian access of technology for the masses with little to zero prior training, adopting and encouraging the nuances of every segment of every user, creating an entire aesthetic and zeitgeist around these niche communities, to the point where a niche influencer could have 150,000 followers videos that are viewed in the millions and engaged with proportionally. It's a great democratization of society and technology through the ubiquitous and easy access of these tools and resources, times 100, times 1,000 now for Sora. Sora has never been more sophisticated technologically and more simple to use practically. There's hardly anything going on the app. I'm sure they're going to add some features, but you don't need many more. You follow people, you like videos. There's a box, and you type into the box what you want your video to be, and then you just hit go. That is it. And when it drafts the video, it's in your draft folder. And then you could further edit the video with a tap in another box, or you could post it, and that's it. We're all off to the races. You could view a video, and then you could reshare it by further tweaking it. And especially if you're following that person, you already have permission, and then it's off to the races. That's it. And again, they will add new features, but they'll be minimal. Look at TikTok. TikTok doesn't have too many features. Look at where it has gone. And basically, on the one hand, as I'm saying, you have this democratization of technology. Awesome. But on the other, you have the bullying and control of these enormous corporations who control the algorithm of who sees what. And from an investment point of view, none of this shit is really making much money yet. Everyone knows its epic potential. There's some super smart people out there making some big calls. And they might be getting a little bit ahead of themselves, but it's obvious to everyone that this is going to change everything and already has. So if you're saying, where's the money? Show me the money. They're showing you the engagement and the excitement and the potential applicability of all of this tech. And the server farms are sprouting gigawatts of power. A gigawatt of power is equivalent to a nuclear reactor of power. And you've got multi-gigawatt data centers sprouting all over the world, and it's pretty much buoying up the American economy in this time of, we're in the midst of a government shutdown. There's a slew of tariffs that are all over the place that are shuttering and shuttering the global economy in certain ways, unforeseen, unprecedented, and unknown in terms of their overall result. Businesses aren't really able to plan, and yet, the equity market, the stock market is at record highs. Crypto just crashed, but that was basically with our president farting and saying he's going to boost China tariffs again. Everything is going nuts on the investor side as job growth slows, inflation continues to rise, and everyone is banking big on this AI. You can tell I'm kind of excited about this, as well I should be, but it's still risky. One person mentioned that Sam Altman, the guy behind OpenAI, has either paved the road to the next phase of human success and civilization, or he's opened up the doors to tanking the world economy for the next decade. And frankly, the jury's still out. Most people are betting on the former rather than the latter, but all it would take would be a major natural disaster, an unforeseen cataclysmic event, to tip the scale in the other direction. And just like my science fiction book again, I believe in the multiverse. All of this is playing out. Which universe within the multiverse, which timeline we happen to be on, nobody knows. That's because it's a roll of the dice. That's why predictions are hard to make. You can do percentages like, where is the electron? Well, which shell is it in the atom? And then as we map it out, you got a 23% chance that it's here. You've got a 92% chance it's there. And you've got almost a 0% chance that it's over by there. The thing that's tricky about quantum mechanics, and the reason that it's at loggerheads with Einstein's gravity, for example, is because the numbers stretch out to infinity. when you're dealing with the field equations of the particle physicists, that the entire universe is saturated by ubiquitous fields that correspond to every elementary particle. Now, this is relevant. Bear with me for a second. So if you've got, let's say, a top quark, which is the heaviest elementary particle, there is a ubiquitous field throughout the universe corresponding to this energy designation. And when the energies coalesce, boom, you got the particle. So you could have a much lighter charmed or stranged or an even lighter up or down quark. And each of these have their corresponding fields that are ubiquitous. Now, the challenge with a field is that it's ubiquitous. It's pervasive throughout the universe. So when you're doing calculations, your calculations have a tendency of zooming toward the infinite because there's no way to really curtail these energies. And that said, it's a similar kind of dilemma for trying to predict an outcome. So if there's an infinite number of universes and possibilities, we happen to be in one and everything plays itself out, well, there's an infinite number where AI tanks our economy and we're back in the Stone Age, just as there's an infinite number where, booyah, we're going to tip it over the top. All of this infrastructure we're building is for the benefit of humanity. And when the mythical holy grail of artificial general intelligence kicks in, where you have a machine which is able to, like a human, pump in all of the raw computational and analytical abilities of the other GPT LLM models, is able to air quote think and maybe even feel and do amazing stuff, which will further revolutionize humanity. It'll be like a human, but with all the world's information and processing power in his brain or her brain or its brain, its non-binary brain. Ooh, that's what they're shooting for. And then the doomsayers say, well, that'll be the end of society because it'll take over like Skynet from the Terminator. Other people are a little bit more Pollyanna, that it'll like to play ball. By any stretch of the imagination, we should limit its ability to wreak havoc if it chooses to. And others are saying, well, that's a much farther way off than we think. I personally, since I'm the one yelling into the microphone now, I think it's further off than what most people think. And the reason is that capacity to have that self-referential sense of awareness and experience evolved within our minds. The quantum computers of this gelatinous fat between our ears over the course of millions of years. And layered on top of that is language and symbolic manipulation and all the goodies that go with civilized, air quote, civilized humanity. So I think, and I know I'm not the only one, I think that it's necessary to evolve an AGI. And by that I mean is you can put these large language models cranking in environments, but you need that entity, whatever the hell it is, to actually interact with a dynamic environment. And there's two forms of training artificial intelligence. There's predictive, which is what the LLMs do. Like you start typing in Google and it'll anticipate what your search query is based on prior search queries. When you prompt ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, based on your query, they cobble together chopped up versions of the internet, which are in little tokens, into complete sentences or a complete picture based on the probability matrix of your query. So they look to what came before and they predict what you want, and then they get better and better at that. They refine it. That's predictive modeling. That's how the LLMs, the large language models, work. As far as reinforcement goes, that's more like a robot interacting with an environment. Like move your arm left and then it gets chopped off by the guillotine. Move your arm right, and it gets a plug full of new and fresh energy for your batteries, for example. So reinforcement learning is when my arm moved left to this thing that had a blade on it, I lost my appendage. And when that same appendage moved right, it got the opportunity to recharge my batteries. That's reinforcement learning. You're not predicting, but you're acting and learning retrospectively. And predictive models rely on training. You pre-train. Generative, pre-trained transformer. Predictive, pre-trained. And then the robots are reinforcement models. I think, ta-da! Thanks for asking, that AGI will most likely have to be a combination of these things, erring on the side of reinforcement, not prediction. So pre-trained is important, but you first need the experience to pre-train from. And it's got to be kind of an organic, holistic construct of these two things. But I digress. That's AGI. That's what everyone's hoping for. And I think it's relevant for this conversation because this Sora 2 generative AI, based on predictive models, is churning out so much content that it's creating almost its own ecosystem of possibility. Going back to the alien scientist in my novel, he can instantiate any kind of reality from the prompt, from imagination. And I think an AGI is going to have to draw on a lot of air quote lived experience that has naturally evolved through the creation of its being. So I'm sure this is taking place right now. You have live simulations of entities, digital entities, living in ecosystems and air quote evolving at an exponential rate, so that the AGI that pops out of these systems will be unable to really reproduce them from a digital capability. And by that, I mean, we won't be able to break down this kind of AGI into literal lines of deterministic code. It'll already be an emergent phenomena. And there's this duality that exists in philosophy, kind of top down, bottom up. And bottom up is that everything's reductive. That's like the Richard Dawkins selfish gene model, where we're all just DNA engines and it all reduces down to just code. And then there's the holistic point of view, which is top down, which is you can understand all the code you want, but that's not going to do anything for you to understand what's going on a higher level. And this goes back to the hierarchy problem and also opportunity in physics, where you have all these layers of reality. And to understand, let's say, the Higgs boson, right? Well, that's 16 orders of magnitude above what's considered the Planck foam, which is the essence of measurable reality. And it's many, many orders of magnitude even higher to some of the other powers and forces of nature. So you've got these big gaps in nature. And the essential point here, though, that I'm making is that you might understand everything there is to know about the Higgs field, but that won't tell you anything necessarily about gravity, even though they're connected. And similarly, you can know everything about the electrostatic force between ions, but that's not going to tell you how a beaver builds a dam. So this kind of gap and this kind of way of looking at the world holistically is why, in a nutshell, artificial general intelligence is so difficult. And the reason is that we have no choice as computer programmers and as technologists to go from the bottom up. You need to program something. It's a machine. It's like lines of code. Programmers are programming lines of code. But lived experience goes from the top down, not from the bottom up. And they need to figure out how to program, air quote, program from the top down rather than the bottom up. And where the two meet will be, boom, that kind of entity. And again, when that entity goes live, when Skynet goes live, no one on planet Earth will have any idea how it works. And that's not an exaggeration. Eric Topol, the doctor technologist, cites this terrific example, and he's been doing it for years, well before this AI revolution and ChatGPT craziness. Eric Topol described how they programmed using machine learning. That's the essence of this predictive kind of modeling. How to differentiate the retinas, the cells at the back, the structure at the back of everyone's eye that basically gathers up light and translates that into chemical signals, chemical electrical signals that go into the back of your brain and create an image in your mind so you can see the world. So everyone's got a retina, two of them, one for each eye. And here's the thing. The retinas of men and women are different. They're qualitatively different to the point where, after showing tens of thousands of retinas to a machine and identifying tens of thousands of retinas as this is a retina, it's from a man. This is a retina, it's from a woman. This is another retina, and this is from a woman. This is yet another retina, and it's from a man. Retina, tagged, male or female. The machine, after tens of thousands of these inputs, air quote, learned to tell the difference. So much so that after this model was trained, they asked it. They showed it an unidentified retina. Hey, machine, is this retina from a man or a woman? And over, I think it was something like 98% of the time, the machine identified correctly the cisgender of the retina owner. Now, here's the point I'm making. The machine was unable to describe how and why it was able to do this. Why? Because it learned. How did it learn? Just by comparing one with the other. And it had no means by which to communicate the differentiation back to the human. And you could take this story and extrapolate it to what's going on in AI right now. I think we've already reached the point in AI where there's no one on planet Earth who could really describe everything that's going on in the AI. And this is the heart of the doomsday AI people, which is like we're creating these Frankenstein technological monsters. We don't know how they work, and we therefore will be unable to understand and realize how they will act. You can't predict something with an entity that you have absolutely no idea what's going on inside there. And other folks, kind of neutral, not doomsayers per se, and not Pollyanna, have observed that we're actually creating a new species. And science fiction has been all over this forever. The Borg and Star Trek and the Terminator and the Cameron series and all that. We're creating a new species. And this species is going to be fragmented and variable, but it's definitely perceiving the universe very, very differently than how we do as flesh and blood biomachines. These are silicon entities currently with no bodies. And here I segue to the next part of my rant, which is in order for AGI to happen, I also think there has to be a robotic component. And this goes to that evolutionary model that I shared. AGI needs to interact with the world. And this idea that it's just a brain in a box like the HAL 9000 in 2001, the Kubrick classic, I think is a little bit archaic and kind of naive. I think that these machines in the future, in the AGI, they're going to need cameras, and they're going to have cameras, and they're going to have limbs and ways of interacting with the world. And these AGIs are so sophisticated that literally you could have an army of robots tied to one brain. And like we've got 2 arms and 2 legs and other appendages. A single entity could have hundreds of equivalent arms and legs and other sense mechanisms we can't even imagine. They could see in the infrared, the ultraviolet. They could pick up sounds well beneath and beyond our range of hearing. So it's limitless, and I think all this is going to happen. But the point, though, is that it will happen. I think it'll happen more or less in this kind of holistic way. And interestingly enough, this app, Sora 2, to take this rant full circle, is just the tip of the iceberg of the expression of what could be a titanic crash of all civilization. And even if that's the inevitable result, I don't think it'll happen overnight. And I think our journey on this human Titanic to hit that iceberg of AI will be very, very interesting. And I don't think it necessarily spells the doom of everyone on board. I think there's going to be a lot of casualties here, and it's going to get ugly. But I think we'll make it. Some people who argue the Fermi paradox, like if they're aliens, where the hell are they? Argue that AI is one of the obstacles, one of the barriers for the survival of an advanced and increasingly advanced technological civilization. You have bio warfare, you have nuclear weapons, you have all of these potentially existentially threatening technologies so a species can annihilate itself. And AI is one of them. And it might be the biggest one of them all. But I also think it has endless possibilities, many possibilities we haven't even conceived of, and many fail-safe mechanisms that we also haven't conceived of yet. I know that a lot of folks, many of them with much more intimate knowledge of these systems, and no doubt many, many IQ points higher than my own, prognosticate doom and damnation. But there's a part of me, my gut feels that they're missing things. And the reason that I feel this way is things are changing so fast that we just don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And we could extrapolate, again, predictively based on what we know. But I think our ignorance is much larger than our knowledge base. And for us to leap to the conclusion that these things are existentially threatening is a good warning and a good precaution, but at the same time, jumping to conclusions that is irresponsible and kind of foolish to make. And with that, I tie back into this Sora app, which it will be full of bullying and there will be tons of abuse. And it's going to further erode this already increasingly transparent and fluid boundary between the truth and falsehood, between air quote real news and fake news. But it'll also introduce a whole new world of imagination and creativity and possibility we haven't really foreseen. And as I write in my sci-fi novel, one of the themes of my multiverse, Infiniverse book is that the more artificial things become and the more we rely on digital tools and technology, the more precious our naturally evolved biochemistry and bioreality will become. There's a whiplash effect to this. It's the way that people cherish their vinyl records. It's a way where people always are nostalgic for the past. The future is going to keep hurling itself at us, and I'm not saying we shouldn't embrace it. But I'm also saying that the more we dial up our fetishes, our technological fetishes, the more at the end of the day, we will cherish the simple banal realities of what it means to be human. And that is going to make things even more awesome. It's so typical in life that you work your ass off and then it's so relaxing when you finally get a chance to chill. You exercise or you work out or you don't eat for a while, and then just the smell of baking bread is the most pleasurable thing you can imagine. It goes back to the Eastern yin-yang Zen idea of the melding of opposites and absolutes. You can't have one without the other. And as we progressively embrace these digital fetishes, and as we express our imagination in ways where a 10-second clip is now possible of anything imaginable, and we're sharing it, and we're evolving even the expression of our own imagination for good and for bad, there's going to be a grounding in the simple realities of what constitutes being human is all about. And I don't think that's going to go away. It's not going to go away to the point where this AGI, in all of its forms, when it evolves into being, will be jealous of us, just as we covet their ability to know so much and to do so much so quickly. Their ability to create imaginary worlds in microseconds and live within them. There will always, always be a pull back to what we would call the basement reality, even if we're all in a simulation right now. And in ways, given the fact that there's such a discrepancy between our perception of reality and what reality really is, that's been known since the ancient Greeks and is only reinforced by quantum mechanics and all of our philosophy and paradigms of science now. Even though this huge gap exists in our own world, suggestive of we're living in a simulation now, is clearly the basement. There's going to be a nostalgia and a magnetic attraction always, always, always to the basement of human reality, which is, the touch of your skin, this fact that it wasn't generated, it wasn't created, it wasn't added on, and most significantly, it's you, it's your life. Whenever you're participating in this technology, you're tapping into this construct of millions, billions of hours of human expertise manipulating this world. And when you wake up in the morning, you're reliant on no one but your own self. And clearly, you're the evolved product of millions of years of evolution. It's not up to you. You didn't do this. But your life is yours, and your lived experiences are yours. And if you overcome the human foibles of always worrying about what everyone else is thinking and being accountable to things outside yourself, and literally smell the coffee and listen to the birds singing and all that hippie shit, if you just tap into the essence of what constitutes being human, you will always be immune to this endless wash of technological bullshit. Because whatever construct we create will never get beyond the reality of how we got here, who we are, and whatever purpose we seem to give ourselves. And within that framework, if we learn to love and appreciate that which goes beyond this, if for no other reason that it entertains and it beguiles and it dopamine booster shots us, but it also, as its own reaction and yin-yang dichotomy, will only succeed at the end of its trajectory to remind us how special and unique and thrilling it is to be a mortal and flawed human. And with that, I sign off for now. And I'm going to go and create another Sora clip because this stuff is fun. Like, comment, share. I'm curious what you think. Much, much more to come on this and other amazing subjects in our wild and ever evolving and changing AI revolutionary era.